Good morning, YouTube. I'm going to do something I haven't done in ages, and that is a shout out. Now, it's to someone who really doesn't need it, certainly not from a small channel like mine, but she did just celebrate her channel's 5th year anniversary, so I'd like to give a shout out to Shoe on Head. I find her very refreshing. She's far more entertaining than I am, and so I'd like to give a shout out to her. In her video, it's entitled "Shut Up, Woman, Now Let Me Tell You Why You Need Feminism." She does a bit of a response video to what she says is the only response video that she's ever received. So I thought I would give her another response video. Now, the male feminist in the video she's responding to goes through a few of the usual talking points when talking to a woman who might say that she's not a feminist, reproductive rights and rape culture and that sort of thing. And she handles these quite handily and, again, entertainingly. So she doesn't need my help there. But what I did want to talk about is some of the seeming contradictions amongst a lot of feminists when it comes to what you might call choice feminism here in the West and what happens in other countries, particularly the Middle East. So I find it interesting to note that, of course, here, feminists are quite quick to tell women why they need feminism, and they can be sometimes very aggressive about doing that, as though there should be an acceptance, and to not accept feminism here in the West is to reject or should necessitate rejecting all of the gains made by the first waves of feminism. You know, the fellow that she was responding to in this video was reasonably polite about it. Some are not. There's one, I can't remember his name now, kind of an emo-looking type guy who's very, very aggressive and actually abusive, calling women, you know, idiots and stupid and whatnot for not considering themselves to be feminists. And this does happen. I've seen it, you know, done, of course, by female feminists as well. And, you know, obviously I don't know in every case if they accept the notion of choice feminism, that sort of, you know, that autonomy would dictate that what a woman does, whatever a feminist woman does, is a feminist act in and of itself, because they're exercising their autonomy and they're demonstrating their liberation by doing so. But when it comes to the Middle East, a strange thing happens. Suddenly, a lot of these same feminists, and even feminists who might consider themselves to be choice feminists, suddenly rein that back a great deal. And in fact, what they say is to tell someone in the Middle East, a woman, that they are oppressed and to challenge their oppression there, which arguably they're far more oppressed than women here in the West, of course. I haven't seen any bride burnings here recently, is to be incredibly racist, that is underpinned by racism. Now, first of all, I don't know how they know this, because the only way that could be demonstrated to be a racist act would be if you acknowledged or somehow made it clear that the reason that you are making the case that these women are oppressed, and that they, you know, that they sort of don't know any better, is because of their race. That's the only way that could be racist. Otherwise, you're just telling someone, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, but bride burnings are kind of brutal, and it's, you know, it's kind of objectively not a good thing. It's not even really that subjective. You know, it could be, the case could easily be made that it's subjectively or objectively wrong. So, you know, the person would have to make the case that race is involved before you could call it a racist act. But aside from that, there seems to be a contradiction there. How is it that you can tell one woman on one hand, listen, you need feminism regardless of whether you think you do, and then to go to another instance and say, well, it's not up to us to tell this woman that she's being oppressed. I mean, how rude to suggest that she doesn't know her own experience here. It's very interesting to me that, and I don't know what underpins that. I don't know if it's a way of answering the challenge that, hey, you know, the rights of women have been fought for and won in the West, but over here, there are some very, very terrible things happening to women. You want to talk about victim blaming? How about a woman being stoned to death for the crime of having been raped? And often these feminists do get challenged for not sort of doing enough when it comes to the oppression of women in the Middle East, etc., etc. So maybe that's a way of sort of sidestepping the challenge. I'm not sure. It's a curious thing to me as well that these same feminist scholars seem to suddenly give automatic reverence to culture when it's somewhere else, when it's in the Middle East or somewhere else. They suddenly talk about being very cautious and having a respect for culture, whereas here in the West, the culture is the very thing that they're trying to tear down. It's the very, the status quo, the traditionalism are things that they're challenging. And I actually think that's a good idea. I think that challenging culture is fantastic. Even if what people do with that is continue to make traditionalist choices, at least they're doing it having had their horizons kind of expanded. But it is very interesting to me. And actually, it was Germaine Greer herself who said in one of the videos I've watched recently that to suggest that women who go into a secret ballot are doing so because of the pressure from men when they couldn't know what her actual vote is not very feminist. So again, the suggestion is made there that these women have choice and that they are autonomous, but they are making that choice. And I think that choice feminism would dictate that whatever a woman does with knowledge, with self-knowledge and with knowledge of the world around her and her own experience is actually a feminist act. She's exercising her autonomy, even if that choice is a traditionalist choice. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with this. I think that can be the nature of extreme oppression. It's sort of an undue influence. Sort of a Stockholm syndrome might come out of that. But I do think that it's interesting to note the seeming contradiction between this sort of idea of choice feminism and autonomy when it relates to women in the Middle East, and the sometimes vicious verbal attacks that women in the West receive for rejecting feminism and saying that they don't need feminism. It's a curious thing indeed. But I did want to say to Shoe on Head, congratulations on your 5 years on YouTube. Well done, and look forward to more videos from your channel. Thanks everyone for watching.